You guys really liked my Defense of Marwyn video. Thank you guys for watching, subscribe for more nonsense. Now let's get to the video. Today I'll be covering a video called Why Post-Apocalyptic Worlds Make No Sense by The Cantina. The Cantina is a respected member of the Elder Scrolls community. I've seen a few of his videos and he seems to be a very great guy. So this time around I'm gonna be a little nicer and less confrontational. Despite making a blanket statement about an entire genre of media, I'm going to stick with the Fallout series. In his defense, he didn't say all post-apocalyptic worlds make no sense. So I'm excluding series such as Children of Men, 28 Days Later, and The Snowpiercer for the sake of fairness. Without further delay, let's get to the video.
Last week when I made my video talking about how I was never going to talk about the Elder Scrolls ever again, there were some people who commented that means it's time for Fallout, which... no.
And I can respect that. It's your channel, you can do whatever you want with it. A pet peeve of mine is when fans don't respect a content creator's freedom to create.
However, I did realize that there is actually something related to this topic that I want to discuss, which is why post-apocalyptic worlds fucking suck. And I will be breaking this down into two specific categories. One, why they make no sense, and two, why they are boring. By the way, in protest of the idea of me making a Fallout video, there will be no Fallout footage in this entire video. I stand my ground.
Well, I'm going to use Fallout footage in my video that's talking about your video, because I want to show my audience what I mean when I say things. That's just how I roll, dog. The issue I have with this is that you start this video saying you won't or don't want to talk about Fallout, but use the Fallout franchise as a base for why post-apocalyptic worlds don't make any sense. You have a right to do that, but making a video about a topic you don't want to talk about is talking about that topic in a video.
Now, this is an opinion that I've had for a very long time, far before I ever even discovered the Fallout series. Post-apocalyptic worlds to me just didn't feel quite right, and over the years I started to realize why that is. In your stereotypical post-apocalyptic world, whether it be Fallout or The Walking Dead, or practically any of them, it seems like society itself has completely stagnated and there is no hope for humanity. But when you contrast that to reality, you start to realize that that makes no sense, because it's humanity's desire to create and move forward that got us to where we are today. And the idea that everybody would just abandon that desire is kind of weird. And this isn't just a desire to rebuild society itself, but a desire to do anything at all.
That is interesting, because the movies and games I've played typically have hope for humanity as a general theme and is reflected in the characters. And that makes a lot of sense, because without hope, there is no real narrative or reason to survive. The inhabitants of these post-apocalyptic worlds don't just want to survive, they want to thrive and live happy lives despite the dangerous conditions that befall them on a daily basis. In Fallout Newvegas, there are factions like the NCR and Caesar's Legion that expand all over the world. These factions are both rebuilding the world, whether it be through fear and bloodshed or power and annexation. Most of the inhabitants of the Fallout Newvegas universe hope that the NCR wins the war so that Caesar's Legion, as well as the Powder Gangers and Great Khans, can no longer terrorize the wasteland. Some people just want to be left alone by every faction, but in the Fallout universe, people who don't unite with others are generally at the mercy of those who do. The NCR has hope that the values of America of old can apply to the rest of the world. Despite the nuclear war, they believe in the values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To do all that successfully, you need to believe that humanity can change and be better. You also have the followers of the apocalypse, who spend their time providing medical needs to the inhabitants of Newvegas. They fight to provide medicine and education to Newvegas and rid the world of addiction. Their main compound is in one of the most run-down parts of Newvegas, where you are likely to be robbed, ambushed, or sold into sex slavery. Despite their clientele generally being nasty, disease-carrying raiders with chem addictions who will probably get shot and killed the second they leave the compound, they will still treat him just like they would the president of the NCR. Now, these people wouldn't devote years, sometimes decades of their limited existence educating people, saving lives, and trying to make purified water free for a city full of chem addicts and murderers if they didn't have any hope for humanity. Even in the Walking Dead series, there are factions that believe in expansion, growth, and prosperity. Rick's group is generally about self-preservation and isolationism. They are generally nomadic, moving from place to place and doing everything they can to defend their homes. These people build powerful, thriving communities through diplomacy and understanding, but they aren't afraid to get their hands dirty to stop dangerous people before they become a serious threat. Negan's group focuses on control and dominance through numbers and intimidation. Negan has a dream of repairing the world in his own image and expanding his influence beyond the capital, creating a caste system with him on top and his most trusted allies and friends next to him, with everybody else working as slaves on the bottom. And in turn, both of these franchises have dangerous marauders who attack people on sight because they are either crazy or they want what you have and are willing to take it by force even if it's not necessary. Now, these people have no hope for humanity. They just want whatever their base instincts are at the time. This doesn't apply to everyone in these franchises, and making a blanket statement like, in the Fallout series or Walking Dead, there's no hope for humanity is in direct contrast with most of the content in both the franchises.
For example, I was playing Fallout Newvegas on Twitch. I kept on pointing out how weird it is that all these people have been living in these homes, yet they've literally never bothered to clean them. Like, not just to wash the walls, but like to remove all the debris, replace the furniture, or literally anything. If I had decided that a place was gonna be my home, I would probably want to at least make it feel, you know, livable. But for some reason in post-apocalyptic worlds, that's never something that really comes up. They just kind of accept that this is how it was left after the world was destroyed, and that's how it's gonna be from now on. But even when they usually do try to fix things up, it's usually really, really terrible. Everything looks like it was made by like a chimpanzee with a toy hammer. And so my question is, what happened to all the carpenters? What happened to all the engineers who could know how to like build a windmill and just give everybody wind power?
Yes, and you're gonna make the point that because everything looks like garbage and no one wants to fix or clean the houses, that it's not realistic. But consider the world of Fallout New Vegas. People are on their own with bits and pieces of knowledge of the world that once was. They have very little knowledge about what constitutes a livable home from old world standards. The vaults that most survivors have come from were too busy conducting morally questionable experiments on them, rather than teaching them the finer points of sanitation management and carpentry. The standard of living has decreased in this new world for most of the inhabitants of the wasteland. Only the bare necessities matter: food, water, ammo, and shelter. You assume that the inhabitants of the wasteland have clean water and the supplies to do the job properly, but in this world, if you are scavenging for supplies and you only have room in your backpack for a box of shotgun shells or a bar of soap, in this world, you'll most likely pick up the shells. In most locations in Fallout New Vegas, the water you drink from the taps is dirty and irradiated. The places with clean water are generally much more clean than those without. Have you ever tried to clean a building with dirty water? That would make the whole place look and smell like shit. In the Fallout universe, you don't even need to touch the water to be affected by radiation. So now, you have a dirty, smelly, irradiated house that'll probably turn you into a ghoul in 30 years. Like I said, cleaner places are generally places where they have clean water, like pubs, military installations, underground bunkers, medical facilities, and places filled with robots. You can buy clean water from vendors, but spending hundreds of bottle caps on clean water for your house that could easily get destroyed by a swarm of cazadors seems kinda pointless. As for your point about repairing their houses, you again assume that they have the knowledge to build or rebuild their own houses, when most of the wastelanders can't even read. People of the New World are ignorant, which is why most of them use already existing concepts and ideas to form not only new technology, but governing powers as well. Architectural work and carpentry are difficult skills to get into, which is why in our world, we pay them a good amount to get the work done. If you tasked most people in the real world with building a house from scratch, or rebuilding one from the damage caused by a nuclear bomb and hundreds of years of damage from harsh weather, decomposing wooden supports, and structural damage from hostile creatures and raiders, I'm sure most modern day people wouldn't know what to do. But you expect a bunch of illiterate nomadic scavengers to get it right? And let's say they do somehow know how to rebuild a house. Where are they going to find trees that aren't completely irradiated and brittle to use as lumber? Mount Charleston? Okay. That's going to be a dangerous journey up those mountains where ornery bighorners are abundant, so you better bring a crew with you and lots of ammo. Where are you going to find the cement for your foundations? Quarry Junction? Good luck with all those Deathclaws out there. You can try the caravans, but they generally only deal in food, water, weapons, armor, ammo, and medicine. Getting them to procure you some building materials is going to be an expensive and time-consuming endeavor. And lastly, who is going to help you with all of the building and the cleaning, as well as the clearing of debris, setting foundations as well as support beams, metallurgy work for the nails and screws, and standing security in case raiders or monsters come to fuck up the project? Nobody is going to help you with your home vanity project for free. And if you have the money to hire all of these people to do all this work, then why would you live in a crappy house that needs repairs anyway? Someone with that much money would just live in the Newvegas Strip. We are also talking about a world with more working militias than actual working governments, where someone could show up to your doorstep with a shotgun and 5 goons and steal everything you worked so hard to build for yourself. In a world like that, what incentive would anybody have to spend years of their short lives learning to rebuild their house? Because they want their house to look pretty? In this world, raiders could take over the town you live in, and all the work you could have spent gathering supplies and ammo to defend yourself was wasted on building a nice house that 3 raiders are going to use to safely shoot up in. A horde of Deathclaws could destroy your entire town and everything in it. You could get killed by a stray bullet from a skirmish 10 miles away, and maybe the survivors want to fix their houses, but don't have the means to do so, or they prioritize things like survival more than building a nice house that might make them a target.
For whatever reason, it seems like anybody with any technical skill has either died out or has absolutely no motivation to actually fix anything. And even when they do, it's usually not for something productive. It's usually to do something that is a complete waste of time and has no bearing on society whatsoever.
That's not necessarily true. In Fallout Newvegas, if you're traveling with Veronica long enough, she will trigger a mission that'll help you find 3 pieces of technology that has lots of bearing on the world. The Illicit Sea Finder is kind of like the Hammer of Dawn from Gears of War. If that kind of technology was put in the wrong hands, that could mean a lot of trouble for the world. She will also tell you about research found in farming technology that, if perfected, could mean more food for the wasteland. She also will tell you about a pulse gun that can be used to disable the defensive capabilities of power armor. This technology gives someone the power to destroy an entire tribe of people. In Fallout 3, your father is working on a device called the GEC. Its primary function is terraforming the capital wasteland to make it easier to live in. Its primary uses were vegetation growth, air filtration, and water purification. The main storyline focuses on making all the water in the capital wasteland safe to drink for everyone. I'd say that's pretty useful to society. In Fallout 4, a scientist named Jack Cabot invents an immortality serum. One of your companions in Fallout 4, Curie, invents a new type of stim pack that uses the properties of mute fruit to make more potent stim packs with better healing qualities. The Institute built a teleporter and sentient robots. Which Fallout games have you been playing, and for how long?
Which brings me around to my point of society itself. Oftentimes in post-apocalyptic worlds, there really is no structure. It's usually a group of people who are roaming the wilds, and as soon as they see literally anybody, it's time to murder them. But in a real-life tribal situation like this, when you come across another human society, your first instinct isn't to kill them. Your first instinct is to find out whether they're friendly, you want to see if you can get anything from them, and possibly build an even bigger society. And that's why humanity has grown to as large as it is, because we are constantly trying to collaborate with each other and expand our horizons.
I'm guessing you are referring to the Raiders in the Fallout series. For the game's sake, they're just a bunch of mindless mobs. These Raiders are people who have completely succumbed to the wasteland. They have lost their humanity, and some of them are notorious for eating people. They lack the compassion and education to dare try diplomacy. They are generally in it for themselves and attack in packs. Fortunately for us, most people in the Fallout universe aren't raiders.
However, even when they do try to incorporate government into a post-apocalyptic world, it's usually the absolute worst possible thing that could ever happen, which makes some sense at first. You know, the people with power are gonna grab it and then control all the citizens, but that's a lot harder to do when your society has become so small. If your whole world is based on the village you live in, and one of those people people is trying to control everybody, you're probably just going to ignore them, or, talk to your neighbors and then just throw them out. And along those lines, it's also hard to actually want to achieve so much power when you're in such a small tribal community, because there really isn't as much wealth for you to attain in the first place. In this situation, the primary source of wealth would be food, and while the leader will most likely be able to attain more of it, it's going to be really hard to justify such wealth inequality when you know every single person in your village, on a first name basis, and they're the ones providing you with your food. I mean, I guess you could send your military to go kill them, but your military probably also knows them on a first name basis, so they're less likely to feel comfortable with that. And at the same time, if you do that, who's gonna be giving you food? Because now you have to send out your military, and now you have even less people who you control, and there's gonna be less possibilities for acquiring more food. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't make sense to be the ultimate villain like you usually see in these games.
Maybe not in the way you describe it. In Fallout Newvegas, there is more currency than just food. Just like there would be in real life. Food, water, protection, and territory. There are also bottle caps in Fallout. You can make the argument that bottle caps would never be used as currency in a real post-apocalyptic world, but who's really to say that? Our dollar only has the value it has because of the value our society puts on it, and it's just paper, which would be too fragile to survive in a post-apocalyptic world, unlike bottle caps. Anyway, you and I need to talk about Caesar's Legion real quick. Caesar was a ruthless leader that based his leadership style and government off of the historical figure Julius Caesar in ancient Rome. He had a vision for the world that the majority of his village shared in. He wanted a totalitarian worldwide government with one leader and under one banner that would thrive and eradicate anyone who doesn't fit his vision. He created a culture of nationalism, insidiously disguised as patriotism. He believed if people didn't have value to the tribe, their lives had no intrinsic value. He gained power through clever tactics and conviction. He was able to instill loyalty in others due to his brutality. He convinced his entire tribe of an impending threat, a destructive force that will be the cause of everyone's undoing. The NCR. He, as well as his tribe, saw how the NCR was just history repeating itself and was insufficient when it came to the long-lasting survival of mankind. He believed that a superpower like the NCR is bound to become a dictatorship as it grows more and more powerful. He believed the NCR greedy and corrupt just like America of old, prioritizing the rich and powerful dignitaries over the people who actually make the government work. In this post-apocalypse, he created an us versus them narrative that was boosted by the expansion and growing influence of the NCR. People knew of the NCR, and Caesar capitalized off of that by controlling the media. He would raise legionnaire children under anti-NCR rhetoric, and would tell stories of NCR atrocities, like the massacre of Bitter Springs, where the NCR murdered a bunch of defenseless women, elderly, and children just to permanently destroy an allied tribe. He would spread pro-Legion propaganda amongst the other tribes, and commanded with fear as well as respect even amongst his opposition. Even his trade routes are the safest to take because he prioritizes border security. Most caravans trade them with bottle caps, weapons, armor, food, and clean water, all because they have the manpower to protect them, while ambushing NCR caravans like it's going out of style. Raiders stay away, the Great Khan stay away, hell, even the NCR knows better. This is how he accumulated his wealth so fast. And in combination with his soldiers using only the bare necessities, and them making their armor and weapons out of cheap material, they save money while the NCR throws money at every problem they can. Through his dedication and ruthlessness, he has gained lots of followers using barbaric tactics that were efficient in destroying and demoralizing his enemies. He convinced his men that anybody who was a slave was too weak to be free. This man used pseudo-Darwinistic principles to justify forced labor on women. He convinced his men that using starving children to suicide bomb themselves is a necessary evil to defeat his foes. He kidnapped children from other factions and gave them new identities and morals to best serve the Legion due to indoctrination methods. Caesar is the ultimate villain that you would describe as unrealistic. Caesar is compelling to a lot of people who play Newvegas because he is someone that can exist in real life. The fact that we have a historical example of someone who took power very similar to how Caesar did is very unnerving to me. In this segment, I'm not making the argument that Hitler and Caesar are basically the same person. I am comparing their methods in which they obtained the power that they got. Let's count the ways in which their methods on how they obtained power are similar to each other. 1. Recognize your tribe is going through hard times due to the side effects of a world war. 2. Use rhetoric that creates a culture of nationalism and pride for your particular tribe, even for attributes that can't be controlled. 3. Find a group of people with different beliefs and principles than you that are doing better in society despite you thinking your ideas are better. 4. Cast blame on all the problems that befall the world onto that particular group. 5. Spread divisive propaganda that dehumanizes people that aren't part of your particular tribe and make them out to be inferior despite generally having arbitrary differences. 6. Convince the masses that their way of life is inherently evil and an affront to the natural order of things. 7. Build an army out of the most loyal, power-hungry, desperate, disgruntled, like-minded individuals from your tribe you can find. 8. Use the children of your tribe with or without the parents' consent and indoctrinate them so that they can grow up hating the opposition without needing any sound justification for it. 9. 5 followers that will prove their loyalty to you and your tribe. Find the ones willing to commit atrocities gleefully and without reservation just to earn your favor and reward them with gifts and positions of power and authority over others, while sentencing detractors and defectors to re-education or a slow, painful death. Your tribe will see this and follow suit, creating an effective carrot and stick system where they are the sheep and you are the shepherd. 10. Send innocent bystanders to work death or re-education camps while sending your army out to conquer the nations around you. And lastly, eventually get beaten by a democratic superpower that stands for justice, peace, and freedom, with the assistance of other like-minded powerful allies. Please tell me how this is unrealistic again. I'm skipping the section where he talks about North Korea and Horizon Zero Dawn. If you want to see it, there will be a link to the original video down below.
However, my problems with post-apocalyptic worlds extends far beyond the lack of realism, because as dumb as these worlds can be, sometimes it's fun just to make a dumb, goofy world. And for the most part, that is what the Fallout series is trying to do. They're not trying to be realistic, they're just trying to create a game that lives within the tropes of this genre. But those tropes are also what bothers me about this whole thing, because post-apocalyptic worlds are often bland, brown, and boring. Every single area is basically the exact same. All the people are either depressed or murderers, and there's never any hope for humanity. The world is over, and now it's just time to survive. And most of the time when there is a town, which sometimes there's just no towns with no people whatsoever, it's not even different from the rest of the world. Like, what have these people been doing? They've been living here for like 200 years. They haven't done anything. What? If I was in this world, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna rebuild my house. I'm not gonna make it look like a piece of garbage because I know what a good house should look like. I have a rough idea of how to build one. None of this makes sense. Honestly, it just feels like only the lazy people have survived. Like I said before, where's the carpenters? Where's the engineers? Where's anybody who knows how to do anything? It's basically idiocracy, except if a nuclear bomb went off.
How long have you played the Fallout franchise? These people you speak of are everywhere. Independent thinkers and builders are everywhere. You need only to allow yourself to get involved in these worlds. But you said you didn't like these games, so naturally you wouldn't know that.
Honestly, I think in a lot of ways, Fallout 76 actually does this better than any of the other games. Because in this situation, you're no longer having somebody tell you what this world will be like, and instead you're seeing players act the way they probably would act in real life. There was an article last year talking about how the developers were surprised by the fact that the majority of players didn't actually want to kill each other, and as a matter of fact, there was very little PvP in general. And I think that exemplifies humanity in a realistic way. There's so many of these supposed thinkers who are looking at this world and saying everybody would kill each other, nobody can trust each other, but the reality is that people don't want to kill each other. I mean, sure, there are definitely people who do, but you know, those people are gonna die. And along with that, these people are building things. This is a world that's actually progressing because players have the opportunity to make it so.
Alright, let's talk about Fallout 76, because there's lots of context missing from the article you talked about but didn't show. You could be right that Fallout 76 allows for players to act the way they would realistically, but you forget that Fallout 76 players don't have free will like they do in other Fallout games. Let's talk about PvP. Fallout 76 has a sort of dueling system in PvP. You need to be level 6 to even engage in PvP. If you shoot anyone first, then the game will give you a very tiny amount of damage dealt to the target. If the person retaliates, his shot will be granted full damage, giving him an advantage over you. You can still kill someone with a tiny bit of damage granted, but doing so will not only be a waste of your limited ammunition, it will also put a bounty on your head regardless of witnesses. You'll gain no experience or loot from the kill either. You can't damage or destroy another player's camp unless you are in a duel. All PvP damage has a cap of 110, so fully automatic rifles have the advantage in PvP at later levels. Nobody ever wants to take a workshop because you'll get killed if you do so. As a result, these zones end up being unclaimed throughout the game. You'll also have to pay the bounty on your head directly to the player that kills you. Killing weaker players in a duel won't get you much experience or loot. If you kill someone in a duel with a player that's similar or higher level than you won't be able to loot any of their money, weapons, or armor. You can only take their junk. This system isn't built for the freedom that a realistic post-apocalyptic world would have, because realistically, you don't ask for consent to kill someone. Realistically, an omniscient force won't place a bounty on you for managing to kill people with a very tiny damage provided. Realistically, you would be able to loot more than the screws in your power-armored opponent's pockets. I think the big reasons why people don't PvP as much in Fallout 76 is because there's very little incentive to fight each other. The game's mechanics are actively punishing you for being violent against each other. You have no choice but to play nice, or the game itself will smack you down, giving the best rewards to well-behaved players who like to hold hands in the town square. So with this system, it's hard to determine whether or not players are behaving in a realistic way. Maybe they're just being good because they don't have any options. You know what's funny? I have found that every Fallout game, besides 76, gives you the opportunity to progress the world. In fact, a common praise the Fallout franchise gets is that there are branching paths and multiple endings that show you the world and how your direct influence changed it for better or worse. Sure, you see people building in Fallout 76, because that's all they can do, but what I see are a bunch of people playing apathetically towards each other. When I played, there was barely any interaction. People were playing missions 10 seconds behind each other. There was no structure or player-enforced governments or societies. There was no economy or different warring factions, none of that at all. The most lasting effect you have on the world of Fallout 76 is the placement of your base.
In Fallout 4, you do have some of these options to rebuild the world, but for some reason, you're the only person that wants to. Everybody else doesn't care. They'll just rather sit in their lawn chair and do absolutely nothing. And for 100 years, literally nothing has changed in this dilapidated wasteland. But finally, one person who's not even like a genius shows up and is willing to do literally anything. And if all it takes is one person to change the world, why did it take so long?
For the game, I'd say because you are the main character and the game is built around the decisions you want to make. But for post-apocalyptic worlds in general, it's because most people in general aren't leaders. Some people don't have the diplomatic skills required to rally others to band together and change the world. Some people are most competent when it comes to following orders. Some people are better at calling shots for other people. Some people are lone wolves who just want to control their own lives in solitude. There are leaders all over the Fallout universe who made a change because they were not fine with the state of the world. You should know that because you brought up Fallout 4. And we reached the end of the video, guys. Okay, it's time for my final thoughts. First things first, the Cantina. I doubt you are purposely lying to make Fallout look bad, but how can anyone who has played the Fallout series more than an hour view this as misinformation at best and poisoning of the well at worst? All the things you say that aren't in these worlds are in these worlds. It's absolutely fine to find the Fallout franchise boring. That's your experience and you have all the rights to it. But you really didn't explain why you felt that way. I personally can't argue with the fact that you found it boring, because there's no objective measurement in which to quantify boredom or fun. There is no universal scale for what is fun or boring. What is fun to some might not be very fun to others. So it's impossible for me to argue against your personal preferences, unless we have a scale where we both can use to measure to determine if the franchise excites us long enough to consider it fun. Listen, we all have biases and that's normal, but you are seemingly unknowingly misrepresenting the Fallout series due to lack of experience with the franchise. It is fine that you didn't know, but anyone who knows the truth shouldn't stand for that. If I lived my entire life believing 2 + 2 was 5, and nobody bothered to correct me because everyone wanted to be respectful of my opinion, then some random person set the record straight and proved to me that 2 + 2 was actually 4, then I'm not going to be mad at that person. I'm going to be mad at everyone who let me believe the wrong answer unchallenged. This is why commentary videos exist, to set the record straight and correct errors that present themselves. I'm going to assume the statements you made are due to lack of knowledge on the topic at hand, which is absolutely fine. Before, you stated that you don't like the genre, so naturally you aren't going to research something that you don't care about. I get it, I understand. But if you are going to make judgments on the quality and authenticity of a particular genre, write a script, make a video, and release it to the masses as well as your audience, then it would behoove you to at least know what you're talking about enough to make such statements in earnest. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt and making the observation that you do not understand the subject matter enough to say that it doesn't make any sense. And guess what? You're kinda technically not wrong. It doesn't make any sense. To you. And that's absolutely alright. I hope throughout this video you understand why I personally think that post-apocalyptic worlds such as Fallout are reasonably plausible. And I wish you the very best in the future, the Cantina. It's been real, thanks for the response material. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and all that nonsense. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So long, farewell, leave me the fuck alone, and take care.